the faster we can be at modeling stuff and texturing stuff and rendering stuff, the faster we can start outputting things. So in order to build like a huge scene, we can't go into that because it would take us like 2 weeks to build like one prop, and we can't have that. So something like this, which is very similar to like our weapons thing, the Thor hammer, very similar to our weapons thing. I just want to go through like my thought process when I build this kind of stuff. So whenever I look at something like a sword, I'm looking at just kind of like a piece of clay. So this is my piece of clay, okay? And I'm roughing out the shape of it as to what I want the sword blade to look like. So I know that in this case, this blade has this ridge along it, okay? And I know that it has this shape that goes like so. So let's say I'm doing something like a katana sword. The first thing I want to do is add enough divisions in here. Not that. There we go. So like 3 divisions should be good for that. And then I want to go into my right view so I can really just kind of grab the points and just push them down. And maybe even rotate them a little bit. Okay. Now if I hit 3, which I know is going to be my end game, like I'm going to end up in 3, I'm always going to be bouncing back and forth between those two. This might be still a little bit thick on the top, so I'm just going to pull this down further. Pull that down. Okay, that seems a bit more appropriate. Now I'm going to add an edge loop, and this is going to be where the blade is going to start to taper. Okay, so I know that the blade is going to be basically at one thickness, and then it's going to taper up to like a little house shape. So once I have that, then I can grab these edges, and you can grab the face, you can grab the points, whatever it is. Make sure I don't grab everything on the bottom. I don't. Okay, and then I'm just going to squeeze it together. Okay, and then when I hit 3, you'll see we kind of have that katana shape. This whole thing is probably too thick. I need to thin it down even further. That's better. And so now we're getting more of that shape. Now to hold this end so it doesn't round off like that because that looks stupid, I need to just add a division. So I just add an edge loop right here. So now when I hit 3, you can see that that definitely holds the shape a lot better than it did. I have a rough shape of this, okay? So I haven't actually put in any fine details to make the shapes feel like they're actually being held in place. So this transition from this shape to that shape, I need another division right here. And that division will stop it from rounding off the entire thing. It'll basically put a little line right here. So I just add another edge loop right here, and then hit 3. And I'm just going to add a material to this just so you can see it a little bit easier. But now you can, all right, I'm going to emphasize it a bit more just so we can really see it. I'm going to add another division right here, and I'm going to squeeze that in slightly. And then hit 3. There we go. So now if you look at that, you can definitely see that ridge that's right there. And as far as the blade goes, that blade's done. Okay. If I wanted to create something more fancy on there, like if you look at, was that? Signs of folding, right? Like this is the kind that I just built. If you wanted to do like this one, which has like these folding lines on there, you would definitely want to do that inside of Mari or inside of your texture painting software. You definitely wouldn't want to texture that or to model that into it. Okay. So then looking at the handle for this, there's a little gold piece here, and then this goes back. Now, as I look at that, I know that that shape is basically the same thickness as my blade right here. It's roughly the same shape. So if I go to just a cylinder and I just place it here, now most of what I was looking at with the weaponry, I haven't graded them yet, but most of what I just kind of saw was just too ambitious, just too too much for the time that we had. So it's always best to go with the just simple shapes. So just shrinking this longer. There we go. So something like that could work. Okay, and I'm just looking at proportions. And now it's just a matter of adding detail. So right here, I'm going to add this little lip, and then right there will be the guard. And then this area will be more of a transition area. So I may have to shrink that down or tweak that or whatever. But we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to take this and extrude it and just pull it out. I'm going to take, add another division right. I want to have a little bit of a gap between these two, I think. Other way. I'm going to take this and just scale it like that. And then I'm just going to push this back slightly. Okay, and then I'm just changing my proportions again, making this a little bit longer, making this a bit shorter. To get this and this to kind of match better, I could do two things. One, I could just take a cube, put it on there and kind of round it off, and that will kind of fit into the shape just like I did with this. So just so you can see what that would look like, I create a cube. I line it up with like thickness here and the height. And then I can just add bevels to this. I think I'll flatten this side out just so I can tuck it in here. I'm going to tuck the blade in a little bit more, scoop both of these things up a little bit. This should probably come in a little bit more. There we go. So that's one way that I could do it. The other way that I could do this is if I took these points and I started to shape these points into that rounded shape, okay, or into that square shape. So I need to just tuck this in a little bit more here before I do that. That way it'll look like it's coming off the surface. So I'm going to grab opposite points. One, two, that one. Okay, so I'm making sure that they're evenly spaced, and then I'm just going to kind of start to square this off. So now you can see here, this one definitely looks a little bit more blocky than the other one did. I can make it even look more blocky by going to the top view and maybe just grabbing these edges and kind of flattening them out, grabbing these edges and flattening them out, going to my front view, grabbing these edges and flattening them, grabbing these edges and flattening them. So now you see how that looks a lot blockier, and then it's just a matter of grabbing all of these and just kind of shaping it. Okay, so it's just a matter of how I want to actually build this piece as to what I do with it. Now the other thing I look at is where I need bevels, where I need smoothing, where I can get away with just leaving it as is. So like the sword, Obviously in 1, it looks pretty horrible, but I need it to be in 3. So this is definitely going to be something where I'm going to smooth it out. I duplicate stuff all the time just to make sure that I have a backup in case I need to go back to this original shape. But this one I'm going to smooth out. Okay, that way when I hit 1, it still looks good. Now this is still kind of rough, so I'm going to hit 2 divisions on it just to make it nice and smooth. And then here, if I hit 3, obviously this looks really horrible. So I need bevels or I need something there. So I'm going to add edge loops. So I'm just going to add some edge loops here. And usually if I'm going to smooth something out, I'll typically go with edge loops over adding bevels, just because they're a lot simpler to add. So I'm just kind of adding these where I want a sharp corner to be. So it's basically just a single click and just kind of dragging it where I want that to be. The closer it is together, the tighter that shape is going to be. Now I can't put any here. It won't let you put them wherever there's a triangle, so don't try. And then right here, right there. So now when I smooth this out, you can see it looks much better than it did a second ago. I still have some weird spots like back here. There's something going on there. So I think I just need to maybe grab this and extrude it. And then just make sure it's flat. Yep, that's better. And then probably the same thing on this side. I just need to flatten this area out. So I'm extruding it, I'm scaling it down, and then I'm flattening it. All right, that's much better. Okay, so now this will be duplicated, brought over by our final sword, and then smoothed out again. I hit 1 so I can see what it's going to look like when it's actually smooth. Maybe I'll go with 2 on this. No, I'll stick with 1. All right, and now I can add some other stuff too if I, wanted some extra detail in here. So let's just say that I added just a couple lines. Just a little cut line right here. I'm just extruding, pushing it in. Okay. Now at this point, I've added these lines, but I've done it on my smooth model. So what I don't want to do is smooth this out again, adding edge loops and whatever. So at this point is where I would add bevels. Because I'm not going to smooth the shape out again. I just need those added shapes that I just added. Those added shapes I just added. Those added pieces I just cut in there just to have some smoothness to them. There we go. Okay, so now there's my sword. Okay, a little bit further stuff like on the Thor hammer, I used a helix. You can also use a torus for some of this kind of detail work. And I'll shrink my radius to 0.15. That looks good. I'm going to take my subdivisions up to maybe like 40. All right, so that looks like a pretty decent just ring that goes around it. I didn't have to model it inside there, it's just a separate piece. Now, just to save on our texturing stuff, I want to go inside this and delete all the stuff I don't need. So I'm going through and deleting all these faces that do not need to be on this surface, because when we do our UV layout, it's going to try to lay out all these UVs, and that's just like the waste. There we go. Okay, so we just need those inner pieces. And then I can duplicate it and just kind of put these throughout. Okay, so that's as simple as the model needs to be for what you're doing. You don't need to try to model everything out of one piece. Even that thing that I showed with the create polygon tool, if you're not comfortable with it, don't use it. Okay, I show these things because I want you to see what's available. But if you've never used it before, then don't try playing around with it your first time, or don't try to do it, especially on like a exam. Whenever we model stuff, something like this, it's very easy to do. We just created it. But when we smooth it, it's going to look pretty much like junk, just because of how this surface is. When we use these kinds of tools, we have to take these edges and we have to connect them. So we have to use tools like the multi-cut, and we basically have to draw out. This is where this edge right here should go to there, there. So that way I have this face right here as 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, right? So that's a quad. And I connect these two. I connect those two. This one goes to that one. This one goes to that one. Okay, and then this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one, I'm actually going to draw a new one for. So I want everything to have 4 sides. So this face now has 4 sides. This face has 4 sides. This one has 4. This one has 4. This one has 4. And now when I hit 3 to smooth it out, this shape is a lot more friendly than the other one was. Okay, so these tools are possible to use. It's just a matter of going through to get them to look the way they need to look. All right, now let me hide this other stuff that I don't need here. I'll take my 2 swords. Modify group center pivot. Oops. All right, on our first 2 assignments, just to make things easy, I showed you the automatic mapping stuff, okay? And the automatic mapping is great because it's really quick. You grab some objects, you automatic map it, and it lays it out. The problem with it, though, is that it's not as clean as we'd want it to be. Especially if you consider, let's say we're taking this thing into a video game, we want to be able to have as low res, as clean of an object as possible. We can't always do that when we do automatic mapping. Or we may want to tweak something or add something after the fact, and we can't always do that when we use automatic mapping because it creates this huge, horrible mess. So I'm going to put on my checkerboard just like before, so that's nothing new. And I'm going to break it down into individual pieces. Now, before I do anything, I have to grab all my pieces and freeze my transforms. That'll reset all of this. And then I'm going to delete my history. Okay. This is just helping us start off with some clean geometry. So I'm going to start off with, I'll start off with this piece here. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to lay out the UVs so that we're basically telling Maya we want to clean the surface in these specific spots and lay it out exactly like this. It's the cleanest way that we can do that. So first thing I want to do is set just like a base. So I just do a planar map. Okay, it doesn't matter what it looks like. I just do a planar map just to kind of put everything together. This isn't going to look good. It'll look good from this view, from the one view it's projecting from, but from the side, you can see it's all stretchy. Okay, and when we did automatic mapping, there was a lot of times where we were getting a lot of stretch in there that we were just kind of ignoring. So now what we need to do is cut this everywhere there is a change in direction. Okay, so over here, when we get to this left side here, let's start at the left. We're going from this flat area, and then we're changing direction and going that way. So we have to cut it right there. So I go to my edge, and I double click. We go along this path, we get over here, and we're changing direction again. Now, it's easy if we have three edges there. We just grab the middle one. Okay, so I just shift, double click the middle one. We have another change direction down here, another one here. So anywhere there's a change in direction, that's where I'm cutting it. Okay, and that'll just make your job a lot easier when you do your other stuff. Okay. Now, the more you do this, the easier it's going to get to pick out what is the change of direction. Where do I need to cut this? And that's kind of my goal with these like mini-ish assignments, is that you get to go through this so many times that you just become that much quicker at it. All right, so those are all of our change of directions. So now I'm going to go to UV and say cut. Okay, so what Maya is going to do now is it goes through every one of those edges and it's separating it. It's saying, I want you to lay out each one of these pieces separately. Now, the next issue that we're going to have is that each one of these is a cylinder. So right now, each one of these, imagine that's a perfect cylinder, is like this. So there's no way that we can take this cylinder and lay it flat, right? We have to cut it somewhere, like along this line, and then we can open it up and lay it flat, right? So I'm going to take this and cut it right down the middle. So I'm just going to grab, I'll just double click this way. Okay, doesn't matter which way I really click it. Usually you want to hide any seams if you would have one. For the software we're using, it's pretty smart to pick up seams and cover them up, but it's not always the case. So I'm going to grab that one there and do another cut. Okay, so now this looks exactly the same because all we've done is cut it up. Now we have to tell Maya, now that it's cut, flatten it out. Okay, so in the UV editor, that's what it looks like. So then we just go to the shell, we grab it, and then we say unfold. And let me reset my settings. The only thing we need to change is this map pixel size. We set it to the highest number. Okay. So what it does now is it takes every single one of our pieces and it lays it out. And if you look, everything is square. Everything is perfectly square. We do have a scaling issue. These ones are huge. These ones are medium. These ones are tiny. So we need to fix that, okay, which we will. We also can look at this and see how it's packing this inside this area. Our goal is to have as few squares as possible. When we're inside Mari and we're painting stuff, or we're inside any program painting stuff, the bigger the texture we have, the slower it's going to go. When we render, the bigger the texture, the slower it's going to go. So we want to have basically as small of a texture as possible, as few textures as possible, but still keeping all that beautiful data, that beautiful texture. Okay. So for now, I'm going to leave it just like this. We'll see where things end up afterwards. This strip here, it's probably too big. I don't even know where this is at. Right here. So that's that piece right there. So it may be too big, but it may also just kind of fit right in there and nothing else is will have a problem with it. We'll see. Okay. So this piece is laid out. So now I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go down to the next one. So I'm going to grab this piece and isolate it. Now this one, we already broke it apart, okay? So this used to be a cylinder, and we deleted half of the cylinder. So Maya already recognizes this is an edge and this is an edge. So we don't need to worry about specifying the edge going around this way. We still need to specify the edge going this way though, okay? Just say that we want to cut it. Now I'm going to do another planar map just to flatten it out, just to get it back to like a default startup. And I'm going to go to my edge and just cut it right here. So wherever I cut one, I'm going to cut the other one in the same spot. Okay, so if I cut one horizontally on the left, I'm going to cut this one horizontally on the left. So cut, go back to my shell, say unfold. Now if you unfold it, it doesn't look good, no big deal. Change something and unfold it again. So this one you'll see pretty good. That worked out pretty awesome. Here it looks like it's stretching, but it's not. Those are just two faces kind of coming together where we cut it. So that's good. I'll undo that or show that. Now for this, I can just delete these, right? It's the same shape, so why not just, I could delete those and then copy that one over and over again. The other thing I can do is take this one, shift click that one, and then under mesh transfer attributes, there it is, say component. And that will copy the UVs from one to the other. That'll be a little bit easier to do. Okay, and so I'm just grabbing one, shift clicking the next, and hitting G to redo that. Okay, so then my last piece should be this blade. So I isolate it, I planar map it. I'm going to slice it right here. I'm going to slice it right there. And then I'm going to slice it way down here. Anywhere there's a change in direction, so like over here by this, which one of these edges? You just kind of pick one, okay? If I would have chosen this one, that one's probably a little bit too facing this way to be like a good transition between this and that, okay? So when you have that corner, you want to pick something close to that corner, especially when you double click it. If it loops all the way around, that's usually a good one because it means it's right on that edge and it loops. I could have also picked this one. That probably would have been acceptable too, but by just double clicking this, it just goes all the way around. Makes it easier. For the blade, I'm actually going to slice this right down the center. Okay. Now I don't know what's going to happen down here. I'm kind of curious because we don't have a whole lot of divisions. So I'm just going to cut it in those two spots, and then I'll unfold it. So I grab my shell, I unfold, and then I'm going to hit 6. See it? Yeah, so you can see I didn't have to slice it at all down here. It just automatically fit perfectly, or pretty good in there. Okay, so that's pretty good. So now everything should be laid out. It may not be proportionate right now, but it's all laid out. So now I can grab all these pieces, grab all their shells, and now I can go to layout. And what layout is going to do is it's going to take all these different pieces, compare them to what they look like in the real world, and then try to fit them into that square as best as it can. Okay, so I'm going to reset my settings. My packing resolution is 4096. That's what I'm planning on rendering my stuff out, my textures out at. Packing iterations basically means like how many times you want me to try to pack this to get it as small as possible. So you can play with that setting if you want to. We definitely want no overlapping. If you have overlap, you can run into some obviously huge issues because then your texture is going to be the same in those exact spots. Sometimes it'll make sense. If you have a screw, let's say you have 50 screws on this machine, and you just want them to have the exact same texture, you can overlap those 50 screws, and that makes more sense than trying to fit 50 different independent textures for these screws that nobody's really going to see. I do want to do some pre-scaling, so I'm going to say shell pre-scaling, and I want to preserve my 3D ratios, okay? 3D ratios look at the surfaces out here, and it tries to match up all of those squares so that all the squares are the exact same size. Translate shells is fine, 496 here. And then I want to do a little bit of shell padding and a little bit of tile padding, okay? So what these are, without padding, the UVs basically can butt up right against each other. And so as we're painting our texture, Maya will not know, or Mari, or whoever we're painting, won't know, like, is it part of this object we're trying to paint, or is it part of this object? So you never want to have your UVs even on top of each other because you'll just cause issues. So by giving them this, it just pushes them a little bit further apart. That way there is no like overlapping of the edges. And then this should be good. Okay, so I'm gonna hit layout UVs. This sometimes will take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Sometimes for a simple object like this, it may only take a single minute. Perfect time to get a refresher. Okay, and for some reason it threw stuff outside of my box, which it shouldn't have done that. But that's no big deal because I can just grab these pieces and move them back in here. Oops. Oh, that's why. All of these items, remember I transferred the attributes. I need to delete history. Now, while we're looking at this, this is, as you can see now, all of these things are uniform. Like every single one of my squares is now uniform. But if you look at the blades are basically holding up the entire show here because the blades aren't going to allow me to get any bigger. Okay, I can't make use any more of this texture in here because my blades are basically as big as they can get. Now, if I cut the blades in half, then the blades are smaller, and then I can fit more pieces inside that shell, making my texture more valuable than it would be. Okay, just so you can kind of visualize it. If this thing is this big, that's a lot of texture that we can if that UV is super tiny, like this, that's only like 3 pixels. Imagine trying to get the look of metal with only 3 pixels and trying to make it look realistic. You cannot do it. Okay. So I'm going to cut the blade in half vertically. So I'm just going to go in here to edges. Yeah, that's about the same spot. Let's see, one, two. Yeah, it's about the same spot. Okay, so I'm going to cut that. I'm going to go to my shell. I'm going to grab everything. I think this one too I could probably cut. There we go. Okay, so I've cut the big pieces. So now I can go back here. I can go back to layout. And then what they should do is, again, kind of fill up that box even more. That's your goal. As much stuff as you can fit inside this box, as big of a piece as you can get inside this box, that's what you want. Even stuff like there's a hole right here. Stuff can fit inside that hole if it's big enough. Look at that. That's like 10 times better than the other one was. Okay. So now if we look close, you'll see there's a little bit of a margin between my last UV and that edge of my grid. That's my frame padding or my grid padding. Okay. And if I look at these two items here, there's a little bit of a margin there. That's that padding. Okay. So that's like perfect. So this is like a perfectly laid out weapon. So I'm going to save it. Yes, gorgeous. And then I'm going to export it out. SWord. All right. So obviously Mari isn't playing nicely with us. We've tried it on our exam. 2 or 3 people couldn't even get Mari to put their file in there. Some people have Mari crashing. So looking at different tools, Substance Painter is a very neat one for a couple reasons. Number one, it's free for students. So you can go on their site and you can register and download it and have it on your laptop. Okay. So it's very cool here. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is that there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do with Substance that you can't do with some of the other programs. There's another one called 3D Coat. That's another one you could play with. That's not free for students, but it is free for schools. Okay, so we're using Substance just because I think it's be a better alternative for the future. So inside here, I have to pick what my basically template is of like what items I want to build. For most of the stuff that we're going to do, PBR model rough HQ algorithmic one is going to be good. We can add stuff to it. We can take stuff away, but that's going to be the default one. I'm going to pick my mesh product. Sword. And then this is how you want the normals to be set up. For right now, you can just leave it as a DirectX. And then this is kind of a neat feature. So like in Mari, if we wanted to paint our texture in Mari, we would paint our texture to be 4096. So every time we did a stroke, it's 4000 pixels going across. With this, you can work at a lower resolution, and then when you render it out, it's a higher resolution. So you're working very quickly, and then you're rendering it turns out much nicer. Okay, so I'm gonna hit OK. So there's the sword. And then what I want to do for this is I want to wait a minute. Always double check your geometry. See, I'm missing 3 rings. There we go. New, discard. There we go. Okay. So what I want to do is I need to create some different maps for this. So every thing that we were doing inside of Mari, like when we painted edges and we were trying to like hide the edges so that we didn't paint and smudge them, um, that does it automatically in here. When we turn on some of our noise maps and tried to emulate certain things, it does it automatically in here. We just have to bake these textures in so that they don't do that. It needs a high res geometry. We just click on this button and choose the same exact geometry. Okay, so this is going to create a normal map, a world space normal, ID, ambient occlusion, curvature, position, and thickness. And I'll make these like, I guess for the demo, I'll do it at 1,000 and bake. Okay, so what we need these for is that as it builds its own textures for us, it's right down here on the bottom right. It says bake textures. Okay, so each one of these, if I hit B, is showing me what the normal looks like. Okay, so this is like our bump. This is the world space normal, so showing me which direction things are going. For our ID, oops, there it is. For our ID, I didn't set up anything, which we'll set up in a second. Okay, and then there's ambient occlusion. Now what it's going to do is it's going to use all these different kinds of maps to make our stuff look more realistic. Like if we have dirt is typically found along the edges of things, right? Or scuff marks are along these areas. So it'll automatically put scuff marks in these areas. It'll automatically put dirt and grime in these little creases, okay? Because it's automatically registering what your surface looks like. And there's the curvature of it. Okay, so I need to create an ID map. So I'm going to go back to my bake texture. I'm going to uncheck all of these. And then back on ID, I'm going to say that I want you to use the polygroup submesh. And what this will do is it'll register every single different object I have, and it'll apply a different color to each object. So then I can isolate each object individually. So I can say, this is metal, this is wood, this is plastic. Okay, otherwise I can't do it very easily. Okay, so I bake it. Boop, there it is. Okay, now I baked all these at a lower resolution. Right before I go to make my textures, I can come back and bake these at a higher resolution. And now all of these will be higher definition, more accuracy. Okay. So now I go back to my ID. There it is. You'll see that my blade has a different color than my sheath, than my rings. Awesome. Okay. So here's one of the awesome things. And this is what 3D Code has too. So 3D Code, if you play with it, it does all of this stuff. It automatically does that for you. Okay, so you don't have to do that in 3D Code. Now 3D Code also has smart materials, and these are all just like default things. So I'm going to grab, like, what do I want my blade to look like? That chrome blue looks kind of cool. So I'm going to grab this chrome blue and drop it on here. Okay, so now I have this chrome sword. That looks awesome. Okay, so there's my chrome sword. And now what I want to do is obviously just have this chrome sword apply just to the blade and not to the rest of the stuff. So if I take this and I put a layer mask on here and I say make this black, it applies this, like everything that was inside there, just to whatever the mask is on. Right now the mask is black, so there's nothing. If I go over here to my pick object, my polygon fill, I'm going to say fill this with white, make sure I'm on polygon, and then I just pick the items I want that material applied to. There. And so now that sword is shiny metal. So then I can do the same exact thing for the sheath. So let's say the sheath, just to go crazy with this, let's say it's made of, just say it's made of that. Oops. I have to make sure that I click off of that. There we go. Okay. So now it got rid of the other one, but it didn't really. All what's happening is the top layer is everything. The top layer is this machinery one, and the bottom one is that blue tint. So I have to do another layer mask on this, make it black. And then I just have to use my polygon fill to see what I want that to be. So I just click on this, and there it is. Now you'll see where the dirt is here, and you'll see how it filled it into that spot. It's using the curvature and the ambient occlusion to fill in those areas, which is like super awesome. Now let's go do the rings. So I'll use, let's see. I'm just going with crazy colors in this. Green, perfect. Drop this on here. Add a black mask. And then it's just a matter of picking the rings. When I use a smart material, it automatically adds it. So you see there's no painting in here, which obviously makes our job a lot easier because we don't have to worry about manually going in there and painting each thing. You'll also see, go ahead. No, you don't have to paint. Now it looks like it's pretty rough, like it looks like it's a pretty low res texture, but I'm still working at a low res texture size. Remember, I can still take this texture up to a higher resolution and create more detail. You'll see that there's like little, get out of this paintbrush here. You can see there's like little dirt marks here and over here. All those little spots are areas where it's registered that these items are touching each other, and that's typically where you would find dirt, like in these little crevices or cracks. Now, all of these are all set up, so now I could just go into them and start to tweak them. So if I open up my fiberglass worn, you'll see there's a color, and if I go to the color, there's my color, and I could pick whatever color I want. So I can make this like red. Now on here, there's more colors inside this, so I can go there and go to this. Pick this color. Look at this fancy sword. One way to put it. Here's the machinery, which is the handle. There's the base color. That's cool. I'm gonna go back to my red here and just fix that color. All right, that's pretty awesome. Okay, so this is one of the great things about this is that we can just literally like drag and drop these materials on here. Now this is the drag and drop part. All of these things are smart materials, so they're already set up. The next stage, once you're kind of comfortable with doing just those, is to then make your own materials. All of these are just ways that they've isolated different attributes. And all of these I can go through and tweak. Like if I say, well, that's a lot of dirt on here. I really don't like that much dirt. I can go find the dirt layer and I can turn it off. That's not the dirt one. It's the rust one. There we go. I can turn off the rust. Or I can go to the mask and let me go to my paintbrush. And I can go through and start to tweak some of these parameters. So here's the texture that it's using for this. So you know how like in Mari, we would bring up a piece of metal and we would paint that metal right on top of it? Well, what this does is it projects this texture on top of it, and then we can go and adjust the parameters of that texture. So if I go to contrast, take a second, or I go to balance, there we go. Oh, look at that. Awesome. Right? So we can really start to customize what this is looking like without having to do a whole bunch of work. Right, you bake it first. That way it knows where all these things are. If I didn't bake any of this stuff, it wouldn't know where these two surfaces meet. And so my rust would just be like all over the place. Okay. And even if I don't like bake them right away, I can always come back later and bake them too. Let me see my sword here. Texture. Awesome. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do inside here too. Like you can even take this right from here and you can actually go to a renderer This is the renderer. It's called iRay, and it's warming up, which means that my laptop's going to start kicking up pretty soon. All right, so there's my. I'm gonna find it hard to get a good angle of a sword. It's so long. All right, so let's just pretend it's like that. So on in iRay, I can go to post effects, and I can turn things on like lens distortion. There we go. I can turn a vignette on. Oops, I have to check it on. There we go. Let's see, maybe a glare. That's neat. Depth of field. Oops. Depth of field is over here now. Where was it? I don't remember where depth of field is. Somewhere. There it is. It's automatically on. That's why. See, I didn't click it. Control Shift right click. Middle click. There's my focus distance, so I just need to crank my focus distance until I get it locked in. Come on. A little bit further back. That's pretty cool. Okay, so the way that iRay works compared to other rendering engines is you see up there at the top where it says done. When I change something like my camera, what it's doing is it's just rendering stuff. It's just like how clean can I make this? And we have a max time of 10 seconds, and we have a maximum samples of 1,000. So it's either going to sample this 1,000 times, or we're going to hit our 10-second buffer, or our 10-second timeout. And so it basically just hits a certain point, and it stops refining this, okay? So it's pretty awesome how just quickly we can get a rendering out of this. Like, I've only been recording this for 47 minutes, and that's a pretty sweet sword for 47 minutes. If I want to take the textures out and bring them back into Maya, I just need to turn off my post effects. And then I can go to File, Export my textures. Because I only have one map, it's no big deal. Like everything is like right there. So I just export this out to my folder. Desktop, C drive. There. And then I export. Now this is exporting at 2000. So I'm going to export it at 2000. And then I'm going to go back and export it at higher resolution. So I'm going to say 4000. Well, I should have saved the other one. Whatever. I copied it before it finished. All right, so you can see how long this one's taking compared to the other one. Done. Okay. So here is sword textures. There's that one. Let me go to my other one. Okay, so here is my 4K image. And here's my 2K image. So you can definitely see there's a huge difference. You can't see anything. Let me zoom back out a little bit. Maybe you can see that. This projector is horrible. Here. Yeah, that's good enough. Right? All right. Well, just trust me. The 2K is horrible compared to the 4K. Like you can see a lot of these like little dots here, over the darker area, and the 2K you can't see those at all. Okay. So it definitely helps being able to work at that level. And then inside of Maya, it's just a matter of then going to your render man. Render man, where are you at? Assigning your material to it, and then everything else just maps right to those specific areas. And this is exactly how fast you want to be, if not faster, at doing this kind of thing. And the only way you're going to get there is by doing these little exercises every day. So even if you don't have class, try to focus on building something. Take 2 hours and build something as fast as you can. Of your file. Here's my other 2520 product. And there's my base color, so I can drop that on. And there's my sword. And then I can go through and drop the other ones on too and make a little rendering of this.